All right, welcome to the third process in our look at different processes animals have to be able to carry out for their bodies to function. That process is transport of material. From our point of view as animals, as mammals, we often think of a circulatory system with a heart and blood vessels, but that is certainly not the only way that transport of material can occur throughout an animal's body. So before we get into the different systems, let's talk about what things actually need to be transported in an organism. Things that come to mind initially: oxygen. All animals need oxygen to survive, to help them break down food and get energy to do cellular respiration. Also, of course, nutrients. You have to have nutrients that you can break down, and so we have to be able to transport nutrients to all our cells. Waste products, we need to be able to transport those waste products to get them out of our bodies. Waste products like carbon dioxide and something called nitrogenous waste, which is the waste that we find in urine, and we'll talk more about that later on. Okay. The most simple form of internal transport, of circulation, if you will, is not really a system or at all. It's simply diffusion from cell to cell to cell. Okay? There's no organ system required to do this. And as you can imagine, it is definitely our more simple organisms, our more simple animals that rely on diffusion alone. Those would include sponges, jellyfish like you see in this picture, and flatworms, with exceptions that we see of some animals, like certain sponges can get very, very large, and obviously this jellyfish can get large. Usually what we think of organisms that can do this tend to be on the small side, but certainly that's not a rule that's hard and fast, okay? Just because, diffusion is not terribly efficient. Now, another mode of internal circulation, of transport, that is common among animals is something called an open circulatory system, okay? So it is an organ system. It has organs in it, like a heart, which we are going to, if we look here, this is a really obviously schematic, basic diagram, but here is the heart of an organism with an open circulatory system. And they also, of course, have blood that they can pump that flows through their circulatory system, but they have only partial blood vessels. And what I mean by that is we can see here's this heart, and if the heart pumped, we would see blood exit the heart this way, and blood would go through these vessels. But look, the vessels just abruptly end. They just end. And so the blood just gushes all around the organs, and it's just everywhere, okay? And eventually, somehow, some of this blood meanders back into the heart, but it's not a pathway. It's just kind of getting there somehow. Okay, we can see this open circulatory system is how it might really look in a grasshopper or a crayfish. Arthropods have this open circulatory system where this whole long thing is this long heart, kind of a hollow tube that contracts. And these little short things here are blood vessels, and the blood would just gush out and then come back into the heart eventually somehow, but it's not a directed path. Let me turn off. Blood does not remain contained in blood vessels. It floats free in the body cavity at least part of the time. This highly reduces its efficiency. It's not a directed flow. It's kind of meandering, and it's not terribly efficient. Additionally, the oxygen-rich blood that might have been obtained by the respiratory organs is going to mix together with oxygen-poor blood that's been out and been used by the organs, and so it's not a very efficient system, okay? So that leads us to the much more efficient system of a closed circulatory system, okay? Which is a system that, of course, has a heart and blood, but this time the blood vessels are complete. The blood is always contained in blood vessels. The blood never leaves the blood vessels. This is the most efficient system because there is no mixing at least in the most sophisticated animals. There is never any mixing of oxygen-rich and oxygen-poor blood in the body cavity, at least in mammals and birds. And it has a very directed flow. Blood comes into the heart, and it leaves the heart, picks up oxygen, comes back to the heart, and is pumped out to the organs where it's needed, and then comes back to the heart, and it always is that one true path. Okay? So the components of a closed circulatory system are always a heart, a muscle to pump the blood itself, and all those blood vessels that are like a loop of a racetrack. The blood can never leave them. Okay. All right. Well, that was quick and simple. So those are our three main modes of circulation, and we'll talk about them in a little more detail as we begin to talk about specific animal groups. All right. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next podcast. Take care.